Hello, everyone. A warm welcome to everybody who's joined in the webinar today. My name is Rubal Walia. I'm the Alliance and Partner Marketing Manager at Citrix, and I'll be your host today. Today, we have a special webinar topic at hand. We are proud, and I'm personally, uh, feeling very happy to sort of bring NVIDIA to join us on this webinar today. NVIDIA and Citrix are a very closely knit partnership. A partnership goes back to 2014 when vGPUs were integrated into our product, which was then called Citrix ZenApp. And we've been sort of continued this robust partnership till date, and we continue to put efforts on product integration, on engineering teams on both sides. A lot of Citrix sales engineers are also part of the NGCA community that NVIDIA has, and I've only heard good things about them. So I guess we have a lot of exciting things for you today, ladies and gentlemen. We want to talk about virtual GPUs and how they can, empower you and empower when you're working from home. Obviously, very timely topic in these times. Uh, and we have two gentlemen today that join us for the webinar. We obviously have Charlie, who's a Senior Product Marketing Manager from NVIDIA, and we have Nitin on Citrix's side. So Charlie, if I can ask you to briefly talk about who you are and what you do at NVIDIA.
Yeah, thanks, Rubal. My name's Charlie Huang. Like you said, I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager for vGPUs at NVIDIA, and I work closely with Citrix. And today I'm going to talk to you about the remote work solutions that NVIDIA offers and how we work with Citrix.
Awesome, thanks. And we have a good friend, Nitin. Nitin, you want to quickly talk about what do you do at Citrix?
Yep, thanks, Rubal. So Nitin Sharma, Senior Product Marketing Manager at Citrix under Workspace Services. Core focus is under the virtual app and desktop side of the house, and specifically around HCX technologies and end user experience. Today, I'm going to kind of go into pretty much how from a very high level, the partnership between Citrix and NVIDIA and how we're enabling an optimized experience for a remote workforce.
Awesome. Looking forward to the webinar, Nitin. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we move forward, a few housekeeping details. This webinar is being recorded, and we'll share the recording with you in the next 24 hours. In case you have any questions, please feel free to use the question and answer panel on the GoToWebinar platform. Although there is a scheduled time at the end of the webinar to do Q&A, but please feel free to type your questions as and when you think of them. If there are questions that we could answer over chat, we'll try and do that. If there are questions that are relevant to the entire audience, we'll take them up at the end of the webinar. So before I get into it, I quickly want to talk about Citrix Ready and what we're trying to do. Next slide, please. So if you've attended some of our other webinars, we have a series of webinars where we bring some of our key partners on board and talk about how a partner technology has integrated with one or more Citrix products and how that adds value to our customers. Right, what we've been able to do over the last 12 years that the Citrix Ready program has been in existence is to really create that brand on Citrix Ready. That means if a customer sees the Citrix Ready badge on any of the partner products or collaterals, that means that you can seamlessly go ahead and deploy that product on top of your Citrix infrastructure, right? So what we've been able to do is we become the #1 source where customers come and evaluate their partner purchases on top of our deployments. And we have a very robust marketplace. There's a URL mentioned on the screen. When you get time, please do take a look, which basically hosts and showcases tons of Citrix Ready technologies which are compatible, as I said earlier, with one or more Citrix products. So please try and make your way towards the marketplace. So without further ado, let's get into it, and let me hand this over to Charlie. Charlie, over to you.
Great, thanks, Rubal. Let's start by taking a few minutes to talk about some of the trends in the workplace today. In a recent Smarter with Gartner webinar, they conducted a snap poll of HR leaders, and 91% of those surveyed indicated they have recently implemented work from home arrangements. Some of you in the audience may be one of those. Many of you are. And then 54% indicated that poor technology and or infrastructure was the biggest barrier to effective remote working. IDC did a similar survey. According to IDC, organizations are transforming as the nature of work evolves. 3 of the predictions drive the point that virtual client computing, including application virtualization and desktop virtualization, is the foundational capability that enables organizations to adapt to the future of work. 60% of G2000 companies will actively monitor and manage employee experience and utilize employee experience as a key differentiator to build and maintain B2B and B2C relationships. Another 60% of G2000 companies will have adopted a future workplace model, a flexible, intelligent, and collaborative virtual and physical workspace environment to improve employee experience and productivity. And 65% of these G2000 companies will respond that the global demand for top talent, to get those talent, they're offering co-working and remote work options that leverage pervasive access to enterprise and collaboration applications. NVIDIA virtual GPU technology is designed to address these workspace challenges as the enterprise continues to evolve and people continue to change the way they work. There's a greater need for mobility as employees must be able to work from anywhere on any device. IT departments need to be able to bring new users up quickly, and the applications they need to be immediately productive and keep information safely in the data center versus individual devices. So as they're using their own devices, organizations don't want their company information to be stored on those personal devices. And so finally, IT must be able to manage this environment and be able to scale out the environment and the number of users that are remote. And this is where NVIDIA virtual GPU technology comes into play. It allows IT to deliver graphics-rich virtual experiences across the modern digital workplace. NVIDIA virtual GPU technology enables the remote workforce by enabling improved productivity and user experience. With GPU-accelerated VDI, IT can meet the increasing graphics demand of modern digital workplace and Windows 10, which continues to become more graphics-rich with every update that they push out. It enables rapid provisioning of new virtual workstations in a fraction of the time and cost of a physical workstation. It enables access to applications and data from anywhere on any device and with greater experience that rivals physical PCs. So you could be using a Windows PC, a MacBook, a Chromebook, an iPad, or even your phone and get that same user experience. It helps to eliminate constrained workflows that inhibit user productivity and limit business agility. And lastly, it enables geographically dispersed teams to collaborate in real time without borders or limits. This slide shows the difference between NVIDIA virtual GPU-enabled VDI environment and a traditional CPU-only VDI environment. On the left is a traditional VDI environment powered only by a CPU. The virtualization layer is enabled by software installed on the server. The hypervisor abstracts the underlying hardware, making it accessible to multiple virtual desktop or guest VMs running on a virtualized host. The CPU processes all the DirectX and OpenGL workloads, as well as video streaming. In contrast, on the right is an NVIDIA virtual GPU-enabled VDI environment. On the server, the NVIDIA GPU is installed. In addition, NVIDIA virtual GPU software is installed at the virtualization layer, along with the hypervisor and VDI broker. The NVIDIA virtual GPU software creates virtual GPUs enabling multiple VMs to share physical GPU installed on the server. Depending on which NVIDIA virtual GPU software license you're using, you'll have a graphics driver or a Quadro driver or even a compute driver for every virtual machine. This enables virtual machines to get the benefits of a GPU just like a physical desktop has. Because work that is typically done by the CPU has been offloaded to the GPU, the user has a much better experience. There are 3 types of NVIDIA virtual GPU software licenses available. The first on the left that you see is NVIDIA Grid Virtual PC or Grid VPC software that accelerates office productivity applications, WebGL, and streaming video, and it supports high resolution and multiple monitors for knowledge worker VDI workloads. In the middle, you step up to a NVIDIA Quadro Virtual Data Center Workstation software, which accelerates professional visualization applications, including Autodesk Revit and Maya, Dassault CATIA, SolidWorks, Esri ArcGIS Pro, and Siemens NX, just to name a few. And then on the right is the NVIDIA Virtual Compute Server software, which accelerates AI, deep learning, high performance computing, and data science workloads. Today, we're going to be focusing on discussing the NVIDIA Grid and Quadro Virtual Workstation solutions for remote work. One of the questions we often get is around how to determine the right server configuration to meet the needs of VDI users. The answer is highly dependent on what applications those users are working in. This slide has some general guidance for what we call knowledge workers or power users who are working with office productivity applications, streaming video, and multiple monitors. For those users, there are 2 recommendations that we have. If you're looking for a cost-optimized solution, we'd recommend using the NVIDIA M10 GPU with the Grid VPC software. Typically, you could fit 2 to 3 M10 GPUs in a standard 2-socket 2U rack server, and most users would require a 1 gigabyte frame buffer, or what we call a 1B profile size. In some environments, you might have a mixture of knowledge worker users and creative and technical professionals who might be using the professional visualization applications, which I just mentioned. Or maybe you want to run VDI on servers, but take advantage of unused resources to run compute workloads as well. In that case, you'd want to step up to use NVIDIA T4 GPUs, which offer maximum flexibility to run multiple different workloads. Sometimes we hear from people that for office productivity applications, they feel that CPU-only VDI is good enough. And we'd agree that for task worker types of users who are using a small set of applications performing more repetitive tasks, GPU acceleration is probably not necessary. On this slide, we've defined those use cases on the right, where we'd recommend a GPU to accelerate the workload and provide a more optimal user experience. Knowledge workers typically run a large number of office productivity applications like browsing, email, creating complex documents, and presentations at the same time. This is different from your task worker, which would just be doing repetitive tasks, maybe with just one application. And then on the right side, these are the power workers. And these users would typically run office productivity apps, but in addition to design apps, video and multimedia, as well as industry-specific applications like Bloomberg for financial services, DICOM viewers, and PACS applications in healthcare, all on multiple high-resolution monitors. Okay, so now we've said that using NVIDIA GPUs with NVIDIA Grid software results in better user experience. Well, NVIDIA has an N-vector benchmarking tool and it measures the user experience at the endpoint to provide better understanding of how fast and smooth the experience is for the user, as well as image quality. We automated tests running 32 VMs on knowledge worker workloads using applications like Microsoft Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Chrome, and PDF Viewer using 4K display resolution. And comparing GPU-enabled VM powered by NVIDIA Grid VPC and the M10 versus a CPU-only VDI, the GPU instance saw 3 times better latency as reflected in snappier response time, 2x better consistency of user experience removing peaks and valleys, and 1.5 times more remoted frames resulting in better fluidity. The GPU accelerated VDI environment has better experience despite being loaded with 33% more users on the server. So we touched a little bit on the creative and technical professionals use case. And these users who work with professional visualization applications, such as the ones you see on this slide, those would include, on the right, those would include Autodesk AutoCAD, Dassault CATIA, SolidWorks, Siemens NX. And it includes applications as well like Petrel in the energy or the oil and gas space, or Autodesk Maya or Nuke for multimedia, for media and entertainment industry. And these applications depend on GPU acceleration to run well on physical workstations. So it's no surprise they need GPU acceleration to run on a virtual workstation as well. For these applications, we recommend the NVIDIA Quadro Virtual Data Center Workstation license, which is a step up from the Grid license. So here, when architecting a VDI environment for virtual workstations running professional visualization applications, we recommend doing a proof of concept so that the implementation is designed to best meet the needs of the user. So it's not a cookie cutter. It's not just one configuration fits all, but really depending on what kind of applications and how many applications they're running, it's good to test it out with a proof of concept. But this slide includes just general guidance on recommended configurations for those user types. So for light to medium users, we'd recommend an NVIDIA T4 or RTX 6000 or 8000 GPU. And then for heavy users, we definitely recommend them stepping up to an RTX 6000 and RTX 8000 GPU paired with that Quadro Virtual Data Center Workstation software license. So for Quadro, if you haven't heard of it, 90% of the world's professional workstations are powered by NVIDIA Quadro. The same NVIDIA Quadro GPU technology that powers physical workstations under a user's desk also powers the virtual workstations delivered from the data center. Quadro technology is also accessible from the cloud from all major cloud vendors. You can access NVIDIA Virtual GPU software right away via a 90-day free trial. Use the free trial licenses to test the technology in your environment. You might also use them to quickly add capacity for more users while you work on an order to expand your environment. The free trial licenses support multiple generations of NVIDIA GPUs, so you can use licenses with previous generations or the most current generation of GPUs from NVIDIA, which I just talked about. We have recently expanded the free trial from 128 licenses to 500 so that more users can be served with the trial. Click on the link on the right side, and also we have in the resources section to access the 90-day trial. And then here, I just want to share with you how the Citrix and NVIDIA technologies come together to provide a solution. And here's a customer story that we want to share with you, where a joint partner of ours, Hudson River CIO Partners, they've deployed a Citrix and NVIDIA vGPU solution for Touro College of Dental Medicine. Touro had limited budget, like we all do. They also had a growing student body, and they experienced poor performance on traditional CPU-only VDI environment with applications that the students and staff needed to run. So Hudson River built a scalable infrastructure that met the needs of Touro. Using Citrix Workspace with NVIDIA Quadro Virtual Workstation software with M10 GPUs on Dell VS Rail servers, they're able to offer a high-performance workstation on thin client desktops and laptops to over 600 users on campus. However, with today's environment, as you guys are very well aware of, users don't have access to those thin clients that are on campus. But since Touro College of Dental Medicine had the infrastructure in place, Hudson River CIO was able to easily provide instructions to the students and staff who were remote on how to use these virtual desktops on their own devices remotely. And so up to 670 users were able to access their virtual desktops and workstations remotely as they would have had they been on campus. And 115 of those students were running 3D modeling sessions. And so all these 670 users were all running concurrently at any given time during the day, all remotely. And this is just one example of a scalable, flexible, and secure solution using Citrix and NVIDIA vGPUs for the remote worker. And so at this time, I want to hand it over to Nitin to talk about more about the Citrix solutions in further detail.
Thanks, Charlie. Let me go ahead and see if I got controls here. Cool. All right, there we go. So hi all. So like when we talk about our solutions and our partnership with NVIDIA, we really hone in on pretty much like how we improve the actual user experience. So in general, on the Citrix side, when we develop our features, we develop them around our three core principles, which is security, choice, and experience. So from this aspect, I want to talk about the experience part. So our main goal is to deliver like a native local-like experience for those end users, which is important because poor experience can lead to poor productivity. So I have a set of slides that I can get into on how we deliver that optimized end user experience for remote workers and how NVIDIA and us partner together to help drive that, especially with a lot of organizations today expanding their remote work footprint. And bear with me here, slides sometimes may transition a little bit slower. Let's see, next slide. There it goes. So I wanted to kick it off as far as like how our VDAs have evolved over time when it comes to usage. So obviously as workloads grow more complex, customers invest in hardware or move to the cloud, we're conscious of that effect that the VDA load has on tangible costs. So we're constantly working to improve both CPU usage and bandwidth consumption, as you see here. So VDA CPU usage is an interesting metric. It's something that you can see we've made great strides in driving down. So this means that for on-prem customers, you'll be able to pack more users in your data center, but perhaps more importantly, cloud or hybrid customers, every bit of CPU use that you can drive down from our stack means that you can reduce costs in the cloud world. So there's a tangible cost savings associated with these types of improvements. And so at the backbone of how we deliver this optimized experience is what's called our Citrix HDX technologies. So existing Citrix customers may be aware, but our HDX is our industry-leading high-definition protocol that helps deliver that optimized user experience for virtual apps and desktops. So the goal is to give a native-like experience, right? So users can do things like plug in peripherals seamlessly if IT allows it, work on their choice of device or network. They get enhanced multimedia playback and also have optimized communication for unified communication tools, for example, like Microsoft Teams, which we're the first to industry to optimize. But the main point for why most folks are on this webinar here is like the aspect of how we improve, the graphics for virtual apps and desktops, especially for remote work users. So like when it comes to, high-end professional 3D graphics, the demands are constantly increasing with higher and higher resolutions across multiple monitors. And I mean, some customers out there may not think that you can deliver this optimized experience from a virtual app and desktop. You still have to invest in an actual machine, or someone has to come into the office to take advantage of like maybe the bandwidth that facility has. Like bandwidth largely is available the same or less with network challenges. So like, how do you handle and ensure a great user experience while also allowing users to access those graphics on their choice of endpoints remotely? So like, one of the things we did with the ever increasing video resolutions, the H.264 standard used within our previous offerings was not able to keep up. So we ended up like investing and releasing an H.265 codec, and we incorporated that into our 716 VDA versions and later. So now customers can leverage the H.265 standard for improved performance, reduced bandwidth consumption. This just requires an H.265 compatible NVIDIA server GPU, an endpoint compatible GPU hardware along with our workspace app client. But the main thing here I wanted to show is just that you can deliver an enriched graphics experience without raising the costs of your bandwidth consumption. Let's see. Oops. Sorry, I got a little delay here. So like, and hardware encoding is also a great way of reducing total end-to-end latency. So hardware encoding time is shorter and more consistent compared to CPU-based encoding. So a reduction in end-to-end latency of over 200 milliseconds is pretty significant. And more consistent encoding times allow for the user to work a little bit more in a steady cadence. So these benefits aren't limited to just 3D graphics professionals like designers and creative artists. They're more important for today's common knowledge worker. And then this slide sort of just essentially highlights the server scalability improvements with NVIDIA GPUs for a typical knowledge worker workload. GPU acceleration isn't just about delivering a snappier graphics experience. The GPU also provides a CPU offload that boosts user density. There we go. So, and then you can actually, from an IT perspective, you can actually monitor the GPU performance of your virtual apps and desktops within our actual director-based console. Again, these are versions, most customers should be past 7.15. These are on version 7.15, 7.14 and later. And then, so like we released sometime earlier last year, we released this earlier last year, but I wanted to highlight it again in this presentation. So basically, high availability for graphics accelerated sessions. Basically, well, ZenMotion NVIDIA GPU accelerated VMs can help you improve end user experience and virtual machine performance by enabling redistribution of virtual machine hosts resources as they become strained. It also improves the flexibility by minimizing the scheduled downtime. So there's no need to shut down your VMs when you need to maintain the underlying hardware. So that's reducing disruption during like unexpected maintenance windows. Without getting into too technical details, we do have a lot of resources and docs that kind of go a little bit more in depth in what this is. Bear with me here, just waiting for the slide to transition on my end. Yeah, there it goes. So today, we know a lot of organizations are faced with the challenges of maintaining business operations by allowing their users to work remotely. So again, Citrix has a long history of helping those organizations with their business continuity plans, which is, a lot of organizations are leveraging Citrix solutions today, along with to provide access remotely today, and giving IT the same controls to support these new remote workers. And partner with NVIDIA is ensuring that they actually get that great user experience. So one of the things I'd like to highlight really quickly is how we enable quick remote access with optimized experience for today's current business climate. So folks may be familiar with our virtual apps and desktop product, but one of the unique features of that product is Remote PC. So Remote PC actually works and allows an organization to provide remote access to existing corporate PCs without having to build out the backend infrastructure. So for example, if you have an exec or team of employees that aren't using virtual apps and desktops currently, and they have an office PC and you need them to work remotely right away, you just install what's called a virtual delivery agent on that corporate PC, and they automatically have access to that PC remotely. And then they also get the same controls and optimization that our products are known for. So like this is just, oh, went too far ahead. So get back here. Okay. This is just sort of a high-level overview as far as what it looks like. So on the right, we have the corporate PC. The left is a remote user with Citrix Workspace app installed on their client. So they simply log in and they'll have access to that remote PC. But they also get other things like, part of the aspect of what they get from Citrix is the brilliant HTX user experience. If you're leveraging Citrix ADC technologies, that's a secured connection. You also get additional things on top of that, like IT has controls to be able to create what's called session watermarking, which is going to give you the ability to control that type of access that users now accessing from externally and remotely. You could also leverage some of our recently released app protection policies, which help you prevent or mitigate any sort of keyloggers that may be installed on that user's endpoint, or screen capture type software, malware that may be installed in the end user's endpoint. The key thing, as long as they're accessing corporate data through that workspace app on their personal device, none of that information is going to be sent back to that hacker that maybe installed that malware on that user's device. And so like we do get questions as far as like, why don't I just use a VPN? Key things here, like again, we've had a long time frame, a long standard of industry success in providing secure remote access with optimized experience. If you're using a VPN, there could be some caveats to it, like they're difficult to install. You're actually requiring the user to do all of the installation or VPN software, which can actually create an uptick in complexity, and also they also have complex policies. They're difficult to kind of help keep synchronized, but the main thing is it actually requires extensive bandwidth requirements, which also can impact the end user experience, which essentially also impacts their user productivity. So briefly, switching a little bit of gears for a minute, because I wanted to highlight this too. We do have a lot of organizations that are leveraging Citrix that are also probably deploying Windows virtual desktops for temporary or remote workforces, or now they're extended remote work teams. So many may be familiar with our value add that Citrix brought to RDS for years. I always like to use that as a frame of reference. So just like Microsoft hosting capabilities and move from on-prem deployments to Azure, Citrix is reporting our on-prem value add from on-prem to cloud side by side with Microsoft. So what that means is Citrix is one of the only ones that you can actually deploy your existing Citrix environments and your applications that you have alongside any sort of Windows virtual desktop deployment that you're trying to do. With that, though, you also get the additional benefits of the actual Citrix core product on top of that. Things like app layering, advanced monitoring, auto scale to help control your public cloud costs. And then you also get optimization for unified communication tools like Skype or Teams, which is currently not available for WVD yet. You also get like certain security policies that you can also apply for that Windows virtual desktop session, and the graphics acceleration and the improvement of the actual end user experience for those deployments. So I just wanted to, let's see, quickly go into, these are some of our key resources for our HDX stuff. So you can actually get a little bit more in depth as far as like all of the stuff that we have, and get a little bit more technical details. I mean, I was just kind of giving the highlight of what I could within our partnership within the time frame that we have. But the key thing is a lot of the rest of information that you can find on our blogs, as well as our HDX landing page, as well as in our Citrix docs. And Charlie, I could hand this over to you, or I could kind of highlight this too.
Yeah, these are just the resources that we've provided here that you can look at offline as well to learn more about the NVIDIA solutions. And that concludes our webinar. Rubal, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Charlie, and thanks, Nitin. I think very insightful presentation by both of you. So ladies and gentlemen, we would now move to Q&A. So if you have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat section. So we have a few questions coming in. Nitin, this one's for you probably. So this gentleman says that they've been using Skype for Business with the RTME connector to avoid load on remote users' connectivity. But what this has done is they have very little control over the UX. Now, given what we're trying to present here, if you could throw some light on what are the pros and cons of this existing approach, or perhaps routing between cloud and remote endpoint via the on-prem infrastructure.
That's going to be a little bit more of an in-depth question that I may have to take offline. Usually, like most of the things that I know that there's different ways that we can actually deploy Skype for Business, but that one's a little bit more of an infrastructure related question that I can get kind of follow up, back up with some of our product managers.
Cool, sure, no worries. Another question, what sort of industries does NVIDIA and Citrix remote work solutions target? I don't know, Charlie, you want to take this? Charlie, are you on mute?
Oh, sorry. Yes, sorry. Yeah, I was on mute. Yes, we address all industries really, Rubal and whoever asked that question. The example you saw in our presentation today was Toro Dental College of Medicine, and that was a healthcare. It's also education as well. So higher education and research, healthcare, financial services, the energy sector like oil and gas, federal is a very big vertical as well. And also media and entertainment. They use our Quadro technology, and with the remote work environment that we're in, a lot of them needed in that space a workstation at home, but they didn't have those physical devices. So that's another industry that uses Citrix HDX with NVIDIA virtual GPU technology.
Okay, cool. Here's another one. What NVIDIA licenses are required for the XenApp published desktop, and how many per one XenApp server?
Yeah, so I think again, as we mentioned, it really depends on the workload. If it's a knowledge worker type of workload, you're just doing office productivity, and you want kind of the best cost optimized solution, then really the M10 GPU is great for that. But if you want something a little bit more flexible with, let's say, the most recent ray tracing technology or RTX technology, then we'd recommend a T4 GPU that has a lot of flexibility in terms of its capability as well as cost. And then if you're doing the higher end, you're doing 3D modeling, or let's say you're doing like media or big data sets, then you might want to consider our Quadro RTX GPUs. and that would be paired with the Quadro virtual data center workstation software. But knowledge worker wise, if you're just doing office productivity, maybe running multiple screens for doing work from home, then the NVIDIA Grid virtual PC license would probably fit your needs. But again, I think it will really depend on what kind of applications, what you're really doing. And feel free to reach out to us if you want more guidance on your particular environment and which apps you're running.
Cool, fair enough. This one's regarding VPN. So maybe for you, Nathan, do you suggest users to access Citrix via BYOD devices versus company provided laptops via VPN? And if VPN, what kind of performance degradation does VPN introduce?
I mean, the performance degradation is a different type of question, but like we usually suggest, I mean, whatever works with your company policy. So if you typically users can access Citrix and it's optimized for pretty much any device. So whether it's going to be a BYO device or a company laptop, it's rendered to optimize for that device itself. So like pretty much they get the same user experience if they're using it from a laptop or an iPad or a thin client. So it's just depending on pretty much the user preference. I know some users prefer to look at using their own personal devices to access Citrix, or if you're using, or the company could invest in, corporate issue laptops.
Okay, cool. Charlie, this one's for you. Does NVIDIA GPU virtualization provide support for Autodesk Inventor?
Yeah, so for any apps, just like you would run, if it runs on your physical desktop or workstation, it'll be supported with virtual GPU. Of course, there are software vendors that optimize specifically for GPU usage, but in general, any application you run physically could run in the virtual desktop as well, utilizing the virtual GPUs.
Got it. And one gentleman's asking if you could share more information about GPU sizing.
Yeah, so if you go on our NVIDIA vGPU size site, there is a sizing guide. If you go, I think there's a link to in the resources, but there's a sizing guide for Win 10 deployment for our Grid virtual PC software. On the quad, if you're looking at virtual workstations, the sizing of that is not as clear because the applications that are being used are very specific to industries. So let's say Bloomberg in the financial services industry, that may have different requirements in terms of how it's used. They're displaying a lot of financial information, let's say with the market, and they need real time. So that latency is very important. And then they're doing it across multiple monitors. And so I think that's why we, on the virtual workstation side in particular, in terms of sizing, we recommend doing like a proof of concept just to ensure that our users are getting the right resources they need for the applications they're running, right? I think every application is varied. But if you're talking about that knowledge worker, the office productivity, we do have a sizing guide there because the knowledge worker use case, there's less variation by, let's say, industry verticals. The knowledge worker typically is using a Windows 10 desktop, using office productivity like the Outlook, Word, Excel, video conferencing, chats, things like that. Those are pretty consistent across the knowledge worker. So we're able to provide some sizing guidance, and that document is on our website. So please look at our resources page or just go to the vGPU site and go to vGPU product literature at the bottom of the page, and that'll link you to some of our documentation and the sizing that is included there.
Awesome, thank you. Here's another one. So this gentleman says his customer is a car manufacturer. They've been using Cisco UCS with the latest NVIDIA cards, and he's not sure what version of the software. So will moving over to the virtual data center workstation software be a recommended step? And at the moment, we have a 950 user site for only engineers using NVIDIA.
Oh, great. Is that a question or a comment?
Yeah, so the question is, would you suggest moving over to virtual data center workstation software?
Yeah, I think for automotive, if you're doing like a lot of real-time 3D rendering in that space, in that manufacturing and engineering, typically our users do use the Quadro virtual workstation driver. So that software will probably meet your needs for those 3D applications that you're doing in the automotive space. And we typically do see the usage of that software versus the desktop, the grid virtual. Yes, I recommend looking at that. Again, if you haven't used it yet, we do have a 90-day free trial. In fact, the 500 user licenses you could get. These are the Quadro drivers that you'll get. And so feel free to go and use those out for all your users. If you need more than 500 licenses to try out, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to work with you to test out what you need.
All right. Here's another one. Can I use the NVIDIA and Citrix remote work solutions in the cloud?
Yeah, so I think this is kind of a two-part thing. So let me just kind of answer on the NVIDIA side. So the NVIDIA GPUs that you would have in your data center on-prem, those are the same GPUs that are available also in the cloud through our, the global CSP, whether you're or AWS or even Oracle. It'll vary in terms of their offering, but in general, the same GPUs that you would buy for on-prem data center deployment are also available in the cloud. So whether, let's say, you have your own infrastructure or you have your own infrastructure, but you just need, let's say, to burst to the cloud, you'll get that same experience, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud. It's the same Quadro driver with the same GPUs. And then please comment on the Citrix side.
Yeah, that's accurate. That's like, so you could have a hybrid deployment where you have workloads and VMs still running in your data center, and then you could also, leverage that where you have certain resource locations that you're leveraging from the public cloud vendors. So you could do both, essentially, but yes, you can.
Okay, cool. So there's one about the 90-day free evaluation. Charlie, is there an end period to that offer?
Yeah, so we'll always have the 128 user licenses as part of our 90-day trial. Just since the work from home, like the remote worker demand has really kind of jumped up in recent months. We've upped that to 500 user licenses, and we're really running that through the end of July at this time. So if you request the licenses by the end of July, you'll receive the 500 licenses for trial for 90 days from when you start that. And then after, it'll just go back to 128 user licenses for that trial. But if at any point you need more, just feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to work with you.
And where can the audience get these trial licenses? Is there something on your website?
Yeah, so on our website, if you just go to the vGPU page, and there's links as well. If you click on the icon on this last page, that will take you to our remote work resources. But if you go to the vGPU page and click a free trial, it'll take you to the 90-day trial page where you can fill out the information to download the software.
Cool. Okay, here's another one. Regarding various user types and scenarios, do software developers or engineers who compile code or do other programming intense work, do they benefit from higher NVIDIAs versus GPUs or without GPUs?
Yeah, I think this is kind of workload dependent. So if let's say an engineer or researcher is doing, let's say, specifically compute workloads that don't have any visualization really, then we have this virtual compute server license, which we didn't talk about much today, but that's really for those users just spawning off compute specific workloads that they aren't seeing anything. They don't need to see anything too graphics intensive. And so that's what that software was meant to be. So people that are doing like artificial intelligence, AI, deep learning, machine learning, or HPC, data science, data analytics type of workloads, then the virtual compute server software would be perfect for that. But if they need to see, let's say, visualization of the results, and there's a lot of 3D modeling that they need to look in real time, then they may need the Quadro software license.
Got it. Okay, the next one's a little specific. I don't know if you have something from top of your head. Please suggest GPU card models for HP BL460 G9 and G10 Blade servers.
Yeah, so for Blade, Blade installations, it would be the P6 GPU. So that's a specific GPU we have for Blade form factors.
Okay, got it. All right, I think that's all the questions we have. So guys, let me take this opportunity again to thank you, Charlie and Nathan. I think this was a very insightful webinar. And thanks to you, ladies and gentlemen, for taking the time to attend the webinar. Charlie, Nathan, any last words that you may have?
No, just, I know everyone's kind of in the same scenario where, most of us are still working remote. It may be a new norm going forward. There's a lot of organizations that are, it's working out for them. And they're going to implement a strategy that offers that flexibility to be able to work remote, even when the offices start slowly opening up around the world. And so organizations are looking for longer term solutions, and really consider this Citrix and NVIDIA solution together to get that best user experience for your workers. Don't make sure that they're not frustrated in their experience, no matter where they're working, whether they're in the office or at home or anywhere else. And also keep the organization data secure, not having your workers download and install things on a personal device that's not managed securely by IT. So just want to leave the audience with that. And any parting words from you, Nitin?
No, it's just from my end. It's just thanks for everybody for joining. We do have a lot more extensive documentation, a lot of the configuration between like NVIDIA cards and grid cards and HDX 3D Pro overall, just available within our docs, Citrix docs site. And then we also have more stuff that you can find within Citrix blogs that will point back to some of the key things that maybe someone's looking for from a configuration standpoint. And then if you would work closely with some of your local resellers or your partners in your local area to basically address any sort of infrastructure specific type questions, those are also available as a resource.
Awesome. Thanks. All right, guys. So this is the end of it. I know there are a few questions coming in now and a couple that we couldn't answer. So rest assured, we'll take those questions and respond to you over email. And as I said earlier, we're also recording this webinar and send you the complete recording in the next 24 hours. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks again for all your time. Please stay safe, stay socially distanced, and have a nice day. Thank you.